the cowboys, get to know who they are, how they grew up, and what motivates them to keep going down the road every weekend. Today we caught up with Timmy Hammond, who talked about his family history, his time in America, and his goals for the rest of the season. Check it out. So thanks, Timmy, for joining me on Wrangler Xtreme Bronx Chute Talk. I'm excited to kind of have you on today because it's really good for people to get to know, you behind the cowboy they see in the arena. So yeah, thanks for joining us.
No, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I want to talk a bit about how you grew up on the rodeo road. I've known you for a really long time and I know your family has a really rich history, but it's good to know, how you grew up and why, your family loved rodeo so much and why you chose to go into bronc riding as a career.
Yeah, no, well, I grew up on a small property in the foothills of the Snowy Mountains in a little place called Rosewood near Tumbarumba. I was always carted around as a kid to, Pony Club and gymkhanas and in the rodeo scene. My parents were heavily involved in the rodeo side of things as well as my grandparents. And, we do have a lot of history within the local side of rodeo, whether it be the Tumbarumba Rodeo Club or the rodeos around. Like I said, Mum, she was a barrel racer, and Dad, he rode broncs and steer wrestled a little bit around the southern zones growing up, and I guess that continuation into rodeo from that side. I guess I was always carted along, and I guess had to embrace the rodeo lifestyle. I didn't really have much of a choice, I suppose, but we had a lot of great friends and a lot of great family in the rodeo lifestyle. So, and I guess it just continued into their later years in life.
Yeah, you really didn't have a choice, did you? I think a lot of us, when we grew from a generational rodeo family, we kind of brought along, and that's what it is. So talk about your grandparents and your mum and dad. What kind of events did they have? Did they compete in rodeo?
Yeah, I guess so. My grandfather Dave Cheney, he rode in the ARRA back in the 50s and 60s. So he was a bullock rider, and he's a bareback rider as well, and a poly buck jump rider. My grandma actually, she was competed in ladies buck jump as well. I remember, I think it was 1954. She competed in a state championships in Condobolin, I believe, for the win there. So, and even on Dad's side, our not being directly involved as a competitor in rodeo, but our family business has always supported local rodeo as well. My grandma worked the canteen at Tumbarumba Rodeo, and my grandfather with the hardware business. They were always constant supporters. So, as a whole, we've embraced that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a really good feeling to have that little bit of history and legacy in there. It's a good feeling.
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that. So that's really good to hear. Tumbarumba does have such an iconic rodeo itself, but also such a rich history. And then they've got their own bucking string as well. So talk me through, I know you did a few events. When did you decide, bronc riding was what you were going to continue when you become an open competitor?
Well, it's funny you say that because I still remember the day I was helping Dad work some pickup horses one day, and I was riding steers and just about to progress into the second division bull riding style of things. And I remember kicking around in a horse in the saddle, and my knee let out this big crack. And I said to Dad, I'm never going to be a bronc rider. And and look where that took me. But I guess I rode bulls for a number of years, and when I say rode, I got on bulls for a number of years. I didn't ride that many of them. It took me a long time to figure out I wasn't that great at it, but and that's when I got into bronc riding. And I guess the surrounding environment with bronc riding is what I really loved and embraced. The camaraderie and the friendships that I made through it, and the support network, I guess, is what really helped me embrace that sport. And I found a love for it when I was getting on those novice horses around sort of 17, 18, and sort of went from there. And, it wasn't until sort of the later years in my 20s, I guess, I really wanted to be good and be a competitor in bronc riding. So that's when I sort of dropped everything and really worked at those fine tuning things. And it's got me where I am today. And for that, I'm really thankful for.
And talking about your career in bronc riding and when you really decided to go for it, you've spent a long time in America. Can you kind of take us through those days when you were in America? When did you go over and how long were you over there for?
I was fortunate enough to get a rodeo scholarship through Western Texas College in Snyder, Texas. And I went over as a bull rider and a bronc rider. So I college rodeoed for them guys for a year and went around the Southwest region in the intercollegiate rodeos. And from then on, I was very fortunate to meet a lot of good people and a lot of great families over there who took me on board. And I always had a place to stay, so I decided to stay over there and compete a little bit further. And a lot of amateur rodeos around Texas, and then into the PRCA rodeos, which allowed me to travel a little further north. And so from then on, just sort of just progressed as a competitor from that day on, I suppose.
And talk us through kind of the highlights you had. I mean, competing in the PRCA is pretty special as it is, but what were the highlights when you were over there?
Honestly, I couldn't narrow it down to one highlight. I mean, there's the whole journey, the whole experience was absolutely outstanding. But I guess if I've got to look back and pick one moment, was competing at Cheyenne was probably one of the greatest thing. I mean, it's the daddy of them all, so and it's just the hairs stand up on the back of your neck when you're about to get down on a bucking horse, when you got 3,000 people looking down on you. And and it's great. You can actually see a lot of young guys over there competing this year, and they get the same feeling. And that's just one thing I'll never forget, I guess.
There must be a tiny part of you watching it as it unfolds over there right now that's kind of wishing you were back over there.
Yeah, absolutely. But gee, it's an awesome feeling to see those young guys like the likes of Damian Brennan and Jake Finlay, and those caliber of cowboys representing Australia. I'm just as excited to see them do well as to even be there. But yeah, right. It would be lovely to be back there.
And I'm sure you had a lot of great times over there, but were there moments over there? I mean, everyone goes through a bit of a rough patch, but something that you really learned from?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It's I guess it really opened my eyes on what it's like to be a competitor and actually rely on your competition for a living, I suppose. I wasn't setting the world on fire by any means, but that experience and being around like the world's best guys, and how humble and how helpful those guys were. That really helped me progress as a competitor. And yeah, the whole experience as in a whole, it was outstanding.
And would you have any advice for young cowboys that kind of want to go over there and follow in your footsteps? I mean, I think no matter what event you rodeo in Australia, the thought of going to America always crosses your mind. Do you have any advice for some young bronc riders at the moment?
Absolutely. All I can say is, goal setting and having the right mindset and having that good work ethic to be able to better yourself every day as a competitor would be my biggest advice. Set those goals and work every day at what you want to achieve, and don't let anything stand in your way. It's the world's your oyster. They always say that, but I mean, it comes down to those guys that work the hardest, and think the most about it and want to get the most out of where they are. As you see, they are the guys that succeed. So from an early day, just work hard and the rest will follow.
Now, talking back on home soil, you had a pretty great career over here in Australia. Can you talk us through kind of your highlights of rodeo in Australia and where you're hoping to go through the season this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had quite a significant 2 seasons in 2018 and 2019, and I was fortunate to come off of the Pro Tour Saddle Bronc Riding Championship in 2019. And unfortunately, COVID hit after that. But now we're getting back to a sense of normality, but it's always been my personal goal to win an Australian title in the pros and do well in that aspect. I think that's every guy's dream over here in Australia, to be able to take that title. So that's number one on my list at the minute.
And I mean, it must keep you, having that goal in mind. You don't just hit the road driving every weekend, you're flying as well. I mean, that must really be that motivation to make you keep doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's one of those things. If you have a goal, you don't leave anything to chance, I suppose. Whether it be a $500 rodeo or a $5,000 rodeo, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what it costs or what it takes to get there. I mean, we've had a lot of sleepless nights, and driving all day and all night to get back to work on a Monday. But I guess it's those commitments and that you sort of you sacrifice those things and to reach the end goal. I mean, I couldn't tell you the amount of birthdays and weddings and all that sort of stuff that we did miss over those seasons. But when it comes down to that finals in the last few rounds, and that's what it all comes down to, it makes it all worthwhile.
And speaking of the season, you're having a pretty good season right now. I've had a bit of a skim back through the results from the last couple of rodeos. You were first at Charters Towers, second at Emerald, second at Nebo, first at St. George, and that's only in the last couple of months. I mean, from your perspective, how is the season going for you?
Yeah, it's really taken a bit of a run for the better in the later parts of the year. We're getting that little bit of normality back, like I said, with the rodeos. We're getting our runs back, the northern runs back. Our southern rodeos are getting stronger again. Those committees are getting back together post-COVID, and putting on those shows so we can attend and compete. So, yeah, and I guess I found a little bit of a groove. Coming out of some injuries and that, and feeling healthy again and getting the mindset right. So I guess everything's starting to come together. So hopefully it stays together for the rest of the season.
And you mentioned mindset just then. I wanted to touch on a lot of rodeo competitors at one point or another will go through a bit of a rut where they're having a bit of a rough time. They might not be pulling the checks that they want to get every weekend. How do you, in terms of the mental state, really kind of pull yourself out of that?
Yeah, and that's something that happens to everyone, Dal. Doesn't matter who you are, you're going to go through those rough patches, and bronc riding's not the easiest sport to get over those things. But I guess, like you said, the mindset thing is, you've got the opportunity to bring that out. It's very easy to be hard on yourself if you are going through a rough patch, but working through those bits and pieces and focusing your training and what you're doing at that time to identify those problems and get over it as in sport. It's the same as anything: football, barrel racing, cricket. You work on those little things, take it back to basics, and then having that positive mindset and surrounding yourself with good people, that's what brings you out at the end, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful advice. Talking about, having a good season, you've just come off the big win at Charters Towers up there in the APRA circuit on the Great Whiskey Boy. He's a phenomenal horse. Talk me through your thoughts when you look at the draw and you see you've drawn a great horse like Whiskey Boy, or whether it's someone like moves like Jagger. How do you prepare to go into something like that?
Oh, it makes me smile and hairs standing up the back of my neck just thinking about those horses. When you see your name up against something like that, it's exhilarating and it's nerve wracking just to have that opportunity. But in the same token, and I go back to the mindset thing, it's very easy to talk yourself out of things, and I guess you've got to take those great bucking horses the same as you take anything else. And but like you said, they present you the opportunity to win a rodeo too, because they're outstanding animal athletes, and if you don't take your A game to them, they're gonna leave you in the dirt pretty well. So yeah, you've really got to cock your hammer when you're going against those horses.
And talking about, those phenomenal horses, There is a bunch of phenomenal horses at the moment in the bronc riding pen throughout Australia. But there's also a lot of great breeding programs out there, and Tumbarumba has one. Can you talk me through what you think, having these great breeding programs and the phenomenal stock is doing for bronc riding here in Australia?
It's over the last 10 years, when these guys and contractors are really focusing on the breeding of these bucking horses, it's bringing the bronc riding competition ahead in leaps and bounds. You look back years ago, and you could go through the draws, and you could pretty well pick the order of winners and place getters through the horses and the riders that they have. You look through now, the colts and the young buck and horses that are coming through, it's all coming down to a riding contest, because these contractors are putting that much effort with the imported genetics that they're bringing over, and it's just showing tenfold. Those young horses that are coming through from them particular breeding programs. It's setting the sport on fire pretty well. Tumbarumba, for example, and I commend the guys that put in the effort behind the scenes with the care and the maintenance and the selective breeding of these horses that we are getting today. It's not an easy task, and these guys are pouring their heart and souls, as well as the contractors, and the money, the time, the feeding, the maintenance, and then the training of these bucking horses to get them to a stage of where they're at now. It's absolutely outstanding, and it's just going to further the sport of bronc riding in Australia to a level that you will see in America.
Yeah, I think it's a really great time to be a bronc rider here in Australia. And speaking of kind of raising the bar and getting to a whole new level here in Australia, Xtreme Broncs has done wonders for the bronc riding industry here in Australia. Can you talk me through, we've got Gunnedah coming up in a couple of weeks, and we've got the Mara Madness that'll go for 3 days down here in the Riverina in September. What are your thoughts on how Xtreme Broncs Australia has impacted bronc riding, and what it's going to do for the future of the sport?
Xtreme Broncs, I mean, what more can you say? It's setting the country on fire at the minute. It just adds that new level of professionalism. The competition is at its best. They're bringing the best horses. The camaraderie between the contractors to make sure that we're bringing those 22, 23 point horses to match them up against all these great competitors. It's the next best thing, and it's showing people that haven't seen this or been exposed to bronc riding before this new exciting concept that it's as good as the 2020 what it's done for cricket. It's fast paced, it's professional, it's electric. I get really excited talking about it. It's the next best thing, mate. I'm really excited to see where it's going and what it's going to do for the future of bronc riding.
Yeah, I am too. I think good comparison, linking in there with the 2020. But yeah, it's definitely a great time to be a bronc rider here in Australia. And I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today and get to know you a bit more behind the bronc rider we see in the arena. And hopefully I'll see you at Gunnedah in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.